Hello and welcome to episode 252 of RPG Fans Retro Encounter Podcast, and this is RPG Villains. That's right, we are bringing back this format for a fourth time. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I'm joined here by three other Retro Encounter regulars, starting with Hilary Andreff.
Hello.
And Joe Padilla.
Yo.
And making her triumphant return after a too-long hiatus, Lucy Gray.
That's appropriate.
Okay, Vincent
Wow.
Price. Okay.
That was impressive. Phew.
There is a reason why I'm called the Sights Demon.
It's true, you are social media demon, but we are going to be talking about a different kind of monster for this podcast. And you might, listener, you might have noticed that the title of this podcast is RPG Villains, the Persona 4 Killer, and that is for entirely spoiler reasons. The main antagonist of Persona 4 comes as a surprise most of the time.
Yes,
and
don't be like me and accidentally use their name around people that don't know.
Right.
Oh, no.
Okay, in your defense, you live with that person, and they have played a lot of RPGs. We're talking about Mike Salvato here, and he has had a full 12 years, or maybe 11-ish years, to play Persona 4. So I'm entirely blaming him for this. I was at MagFest with him 4 or 5 years ago, and he didn't know where the song "Reach Out to the Truth" came from. I was embarrassed for him.
Okay, I did not know that part.
This was a while ago, and like me and Caitlin were jumping up and down while Mike was just sort of sitting there looking side to side like John Travolta. But anyway, okay. But anyway, listeners, this is called the Persona 4 Killer. This is about the antagonist of Persona 4. The whole episode is. We are going to break that person down and analyze them in a weird way, inspired by Shea Serrano's Villains podcast, which is worth listening to. But for spoiler reasons, it's not in the title. So you have 5 seconds before we spoil all of Persona 4 for you. So hit that pause or skip button now if you don't want to be spoiled on most of Persona 4. So.
And it's Nanako.
The Persona 4 killer is Toru Adachi, or the junior detective, who is the partner of, someone not important. We'll skip over that guy, right, Lucy?
I came on here for one reason, and that's to support Lucy in all of her pursuits of Dojima.
Yeah,
he's by far her favorite.
We'll talk about Detective Dojima a little bit. But this episode is mostly going to be about Adachi, or at least in large part, the main villain of Persona 4. And so now that the spoiler cat's out of the bag, I'm going to spoil basically all of Persona 4 in 5 minutes. But let's talk about our personal experiences with Persona 4. I'll go first. I've said this on podcasts before. I thought Persona was bad and overrated for 10 years. I don't even like the word overrated, but I'll use it for this dark period of my life. Because I rented Persona 1, thought it was bad. Rented Persona 2, thought it was confusing. This was Eternal Punishment, and this was all in the early 2000s. So I avoided Persona for about a decade. Multiple friends insisted I try Persona 3. I played it. I loved it. I bought Persona 4. I beat it 4 times in 2 years. Now it's one of my favorite games of all time. There is also a full Persona 4 episode on Retro Encounter from, Jiminy Crickets, 2016 or something. I'd have to look that up when that dropped. But
I believe it was 2017.
All right, sure. I trust you because I've recorded so many podcasts over the past 5 years. They all run together. But Lucy, what's your background with Persona 4?
So Persona 4 was actually one of the first games I picked up as a long-form RPG fan. Somebody had given me Final Fantasy VI and watched me in terror as I played through it. Not that they're on this podcast or anything. I got then Persona 4 as something to do as an unwind. Got all the way to the final battle. Had my PlayStation 3 get the yellow ring of death.
Oh no!
Get a new PlayStation 2 just to beat the game. Go through and beat the game. Beat it again as Persona 4 Golden, Persona 4 Ultimax, and basically got known for drawing terrible Dojima art online, which my poor roommate has yet to live down.
Speaking of your poor roommate, Hilary, what's your background and appreciation of Persona 4?
I mean, I've been into RPGs for a really, really long time, but I was a bit late trying out Persona 4. It wasn't until at least a few years after it came out. I was visiting some friends in North Dakota, there was not a lot to do. We played Persona 4. It was my first Persona game. I got completely hooked and didn't mind that that's how we spent our time, and found a copy immediately after I got back and beat it. And then that inspired me to go on and play 3, and then Eternal Punishment, which I still need to finish, and 5.
All right, and Joe, your turn. What's your background with Persona 4?
Well, my first week of college, I went to an anime club meeting, and they're like, "What should we watch?" "Oh, let's watch the first Persona 3 movie." And I was like, "Okay, I don't know what Persona is." So I watched that. I thought it was awesome. I watched the other movies. I didn't know Persona was a game series at this time. And then I picked up Persona 4 a couple of years later. Played through about half of it. Then college got in the way. And then I picked up Persona 4 Golden last year and just completed it 6 weeks ago on Vita.
Awesome. I guess I want to add a small addendum to my thing. Again, Persona 3 was the first Persona game I played all the way through. That was, I think 2012. And then I was very keen to play more, so I bought Persona 4 on the RPG Fan forum off of someone named Stephanie Sabidlo. I bought her Canadian copy of Persona 4 and played through that twice in a row. Then a year or two later, I got Golden and played that twice in a row.
What made it Canadian? Did they say at the end of all
the they're all the same, because North American game consoles all use the same formatting stuff, but maybe the back of the box had instructions in French. It's just but I played this game for the first time on Steph Sabidlo's copy, and now that I don't know, maybe I should give it back to her and thank her.
That'd be sweet.
That was I think 7 years ago. I'd have to I don't know, check my PayPal or something. But back to this. Persona 4 is basically a murder mystery RPG where there are 2 mysterious deaths at the beginning of the game, and the main character, who is a nameless new arrival to the town of Inaba, makes some friends in town, and they all sort of decide to solve the crimes, which have a supernatural bent to them. I don't want to go over every little thing about Persona 4 because that would take far too long, but I'm going to try and give you a brief synopsis of what happens in the game from Adachi's perspective. And this is for everyone's benefit, including the listeners, and I really hope this is 2 minutes and not 10 minutes. But in general, Adachi arrives in town somewhat earlier than the protagonist does. He meets a gas station attendant. Then there's a scandal in the area where a politician named Namatame has an affair that's made public with a newsreader named Mayumi Yamano. So, for a while, Yamano requires a police detail, and Adachi is one of the people in that police detail. Now, Adachi is a creep, a bad guy, just a lot of those things, but keeps it a bit bottled up, and he had a bit of a celebrity crush on Yamano, so while he was in her police detail, he visited her in her hotel room. There was an altercation, and he accidentally shoves her into the television, and Yamano disappeared into the television to the surprise of everyone involved, because somehow Adachi and 2 other people were given the ability to access a secret dimension that is entered through a television. And a few days later, after a foggy day, Yamano mysteriously appears dead on I think a TV antenna or a radio tower or something. Adachi's not really sure how this happened. But later, when he is interviewing Saki Konishi, the young woman who found Yamano's body, at a police station alone, and decides to sort of test what happened to Yamano again, and shoves her into the TV. And sure enough, she appears dead, I think on a water tower this time, a few days later. And Adachi's like, well, this is crazy. If you shove someone into the TV, they appear dead a few days later. And because Adachi is a bad guy and a bit of a sadist, when he solicits a call from Namatame, the politician who was having the affair with Yamano, Adachi sort of talks Yamatame into the idea that, oh yeah, the people you see trapped in the TV, they're gonna die unless you can save them, and you save them by pushing them into the TV. And he heavily suggests this in his conversation with Namatame, which leads to Namatame kidnapping 5 people and throwing them into the TV. Namatame thinks this is saving them, but really it's endangering their lives, just how Saki Konishi and Mayumi Yamano died. Now, where the main characters come in, our hero and his friends from school realize that that going into the TV is basically a death sentence for someone unless they are freed from the TV world before it rains. So those 5 people that Namatame threatens the lives of, they have to go one by one, go into the television and rescue them.
Right, because they're also seeing the signs like at midnight.
Yes.
They're tuning into the midnight channel and seeing the same thing that Namatame is, but they see it. They understand what's going on with the TV world a little bit better, so they know they need to get the person out.
Yeah, because of some kind of collective subconscious thing, people are seeing people from recent news reports on the TV when it's turned off at midnight on rainy days, and Namatame sees this as a signal that people need to be rescued and thrown into the TV, while the investigation team takes this as, oh, these people could be the next victim. We need to rescue them from the TV world. And it's the investigation team that has it right, and Namatame who was tricked into doing this by Adachi. And Adachi pushes a third person to the TV, a young man named Mitsuo, who is another creep, but is a bit of a red herring designed to throw the investigation team off of his trail. But eventually, the investigation team confronts Namatame when they're rescuing the main character's adorable cousin Nanako. And Namatame who's been having a real rough 2011, or whatever year this takes place in. Namatame sort of breaks down mentally, eventually, and if you do the end game December 6th, December 9th, if you do that event correctly, the investigation team realizes that there's still missing pieces to the puzzle. They allow Namatame to live, because there's a very dark moment when you almost throw him into the TV himself. And through some more interviews and investigation, they realize that Adachi is the person who killed Yamano and Saki, and they pursue him into Adachi's dark TV world to confront him. There's a little bit more to the story, but we'll get into that later. Adachi starts out as a killer of 2 people, and then a manipulator who almost kills 5 or 6 others. And that is the core plot of Persona 4, trying to stop this serial killer / kidnapper before the next victim falls. So, I apologize for that long soliloquy, so now's the time for other people to talk. Looking at Adachi specifically, we're going to go into the first villains category. Is Adachi scary? What makes him scary, if he is, and is he an effective villain? Like, do we fear and hate him to a degree? Joe, you go first.
My first impressions of Adachi, which I think a lot of people would share, is just he's a bumbling, incompetent cop, essentially. You know, he's poor at his job. He spills information about cases to the citizenry, and he doesn't come across as scary. You don't really think too much of him at first. It starts to seep in that there's something wrong here. But up until that point, he's just this sort of like, there's Adachi, kind of has this sort of Barney from the Andy Griffith Show sort of thing to him.
Yeah, he's almost like Columbo until you realize that Columbo is smart. But with Adachi, it's like, oh, he's kind of a mess until you realize he's evil.
Right, yes.
Lucy, what are your complicated and certainly safe for work thoughts on Adachi?
I think particularly with Adachi is that, yes, he starts out as somebody who you're not really sure what to make of him. He's sort of just this extra who you can plod for information. But I think in some ways that makes him scary. Golden goes a little bit more into his backstory about the fact that the last thing he wanted to do was be transferred out to the boonies, and he really felt that he worked hard in school, he studied hard, and yet this is the best that he could do, and he didn't feel that that was fair, and that he felt that this was owed to him. And I think for a lot of people it's scary and frightening because he is somebody who you could know, and I personally have run into people with that particular mindset, and it frightens me. And it's sort of taken to the next extreme. But Adachi is played very well in that you're not quite sure if he's, when you go play the game a second time and you start looking at his lines, you start wondering whether or not he's doing this on purpose. He just doesn't care, or if he's purposely trying to get you to get to play a game with him because he's just that smart and really looks down on everybody else.
And that bored.
Yes.
Yeah, he's full of contempt, and feeling that everything he's doing is beneath him makes him this, I think brings out the sadism in him that is partially attached to boredom. Like, he hasn't been in town that much longer than the main character has. He was transferred and feels like that his new role as a junior detective way in the sticks is beneath him, and I think that's why he got a rise out of killing Amano for the first time and manipulating Namatame instead of murdering more than beyond a second victim. And
again, this is they fleshed this out a bit in Golden. They also fleshed it out in Persona 4 the animation and the manga that was produced based on the game. A lot of Adachi's motivation is boredom, but it's also that he feels like he's owed something. That he really feels that, when he's first killing Amano, that he deserves her. That, she went after somebody who didn't deserve her, and the fact that she betrayed him is why he throws her into the TV. And that his big speech at the end when he's confronted is very much about being owed what he feels is rightfully his.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why he so dislikes the protagonist is that, when the protagonist comes into it comes into his uncle's life, his uncle suddenly doesn't spend as much time with Adachi. And that's one of the things that is hinted at, is that Adachi was purposely screwing up paperwork and such to make sure that Dojima wasn't coming home. It's one of those really sort of, you're not, it's never explicitly said, but you're going, holy crap, did he plan all of this out? And that he's really that petty. And it really is scary because you're not quite sure, and you're not... And the fact that you can possibly be, aren't sure about it makes it him to be even scarier for me.
I think the only things I would add to that is, well, first thing, it's that sense of entitlement and that complete lack of empathy that I think is the hands down scariest thing about Adachi. He doesn't give a crap about anyone.
That lack of empathy, I think, is really key here. He everything he acts for is to alleviate boredom or out of a strange selfishness.
Right.
And he has some kind of psychosis or maybe antisocial personality disorder. I don't know. But late in the game, when you meet sort of another villain, they say that they gave persona powers to 3 people: one person full of hope, one person full of despair, and one person full of emptiness. And Adachi is the one full of emptiness. He doesn't feel. I don't think he can really feel anything other than maybe sexual gratification or maybe from committing acts like murder or manipulation.
But he does have there's some weird qualities to him in how he kind of perceives the good and bad in people. He relishes tossing Mitsuo in TV, just as he relished tossing Saki in there. But I think he views them vastly differently in terms of the kind of people out there. He thinks Mitsuo is terrible, but he doesn't really have, I don't think, a terribly negative view of Saki. And I think it just speaks to that, more of that void that he has, where there is something that he's feeling, but he kind of wants to feed into the void in him more than anything else.
So, Joe, do you think Adachi is scary or effective?
I think he's effective. I think he's scary when he becomes. I think he's scary when his true intentions and what he's done all throughout the game have been revealed.
Yeah, it's a transformative moment when you sort of realize Adachi's the killer and then confront him in the TV world. Like his portrait changes, his manner of speaking changes. It's creepy. That's when I sort of got creeped out enough by Adachi or found him scary enough that he really seemed threatening, because he goes from being not threatening at all to very threatening in a matter of minutes.
An interesting thing is that when if you play Persona 4 or Ultimax, there's the Adachi episode where you can play partially as Adachi, and you get a little bit of a glimpse into his thought process, and he is frighteningly smart, and like he's being interrogated. At this point, it's after the events of Persona 4. They're still trying to pin stuff on him because, there isn't a lot of evidence because it all happened in this mysterious TV world that nobody else believes in. And he just turns the other interrogations on their heads because he knows all their tactics. He knows what they're supposed to do, and knows what answers they want out of him. And they're trying desperately. And one other interesting point from Ultimax that comes up is that they talk about if they're going through the stuff that they found in his apartment. And one of the things they find is a modified replica gun so that it would actually shoot. And apparently Adachi joined the police force to be able to shoot guns because he thought that was cool. And it was one of those, this guy is so terrifying. He didn't even join the police force for a noble goal. He wants to be able to shoot and hurt people. He wants that power. And I think that's one of the scary things about him.
All right, so we basically agree that Adachi's scary. He's a serial killer that maybe resembles other serial killers from real life or fiction, from the psychosis to his contempt to his methods. But let's talk about his exactly what Adachi does. The next category is called worst behavior. What do we think is the most awful thing Adachi does in Persona 4? I'll give a couple starting suggestions, and you can add to the list if you want. First of all, killing Mayumi Amano. Second of all, killing Saki Konishi. Third of all, manipulating Namatame into this whole wild goose chase that is most of Persona 4's plot. Or, I guess 4, betraying the trust of Dojima, the main character, and all these other people while sort of concealing the truth from them. Which of those do you think is the worst thing he does, or do we have other suggestions for candidates?
The older woman with the cabbage is really nice to him, and he shouldn't be such a jerk.
Just because he doesn't like taro. Oh my god.
Him buying cabbage from Junes is a recurring theme in the game that I think they go even more into in Golden, because Golden has an Adachi social link that isn't present in the original game. But I don't know. I still think killing a lady is worse than being mean about cabbage.
Oh yeah, I'm being very flippant, but I'd say that his first, Mayumi Yamano was probably the worst because it's debatable that her being thrown into the TV may have been a better outcome than what he may have done, because as you hinted at with the fact that he probably feels sexual attraction and desire and such, and that situation looked like it could have spiraled into something really awful as well.
Now there I'm going to have to argue with you, Joe, because I think that I do agree that was horrible. Though, depending on which media you're talking, it's sort of, we're not entirely sure if Adachi knew what would happen when he threw somebody into the TV for the first time. So when that happened, Amano was bad. The fact that he did it to Sachi Kanishi, knowing what would happen to her, and for the simple fact that she had just witnessed something, and again, depending on the media, may have been that Adachi hit on her and she didn't return his affections. And
Yeah, I don't know if he really had really specific intent with Saki, but it does. I think he does come on to her and she rejects him immediately, which only makes him more confident in his decision to push her into the TV.
Right.
And at that point, he knows what happens to the people who get shoved in.
He's seen someone end up dead already.
And he actually looks forward to it. That I think was the word. It was the scariest for me, because when looking back on it and when he's admitting to it, it's just horrifying, because it's not a crime of passion. It's something that he knew what was going to happen, and he was calculating and just awful about it. And
I think you could almost kind of continue that argument as far as Namatame, though, because had everything gone the way he thought it was going to go, that would have resulted in 5 more, I think, deaths that were premeditated in that way. So it's all bad.
I agree it's all bad, but I think the person I'm closest to siding with is Hilary, because what he did to all of them is awful. And with Amano, it may have resulted in rape or worse, but I sort of also hesitate because Adachi would have been caught easily. And I think he is interested in protecting he doesn't want to go to jail. But what happened to Mayumi Amano was an accident, and what happened to Saki Konishi was a continuation that might have been try to confirm that that's what happened, like testing a hypothesis even. Or like her death was maybe almost an experiment. And then with Namatame, he had a better idea of what happened with the TV world, but didn't want to be caught doing it. So he's manipulating this person full of despair into doing it. And maybe Namatame would have realized how wrong he was if his first victim, who's the main character's friend Yukiko, if Yukiko had died, maybe Namatame would have stopped. But Adachi tried to have 5 or more people die completely, and with his hands completely clean, in his manipulation of Namatame. And I think that because that has the most intent and is the most devious plot, I sort of think that's the worst thing he does.
I also have a flippant answer, though, if you don't mind me sharing that really quickly.
Oh, please.
He's worse at adjusting to the countryside than Yosuke.
Oof.
Yosuke is a teenage boy.
And what I was saying more so with Mayumi Yamano is the fact that he didn't know what was going to happen with the TV. So if that hadn't happened, because he didn't know that, Mayumi Yamano is going to go into this TV, what would have happened had that not occurred? What would he have done? Is what I think about in terms of Adachi being awful because of what that situation may have led to.
I have another flippant answer for this question. The worst thing Adachi does is keep Dojima working too long and keeping Nanako's dad away from Nanako.
Yes.
That's the real crime here. Okay, but now we're going to take a very different angle to the questions here, and the next category is called Maybe They Had a Point. Is there any justification for Adachi's actions? Is there any way we can logic out a way that makes him, if not the hero, at least giving him a tangible reason for what he does? And we're going to play devil's advocate real hard this time, which is true for every episode of villains that we've done, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a little easier this time because at least Adachi's not a genocidal maniac like Luca Blight or Kefka.
That's true.
So do we think Adachi had a point? I think, again, because he probably has antisocial personality disorder or something similar, he probably thinks that all of it's justified. In his mind, he has a point, and everyone else is just getting in his way and interfering with his plans and games. Other than that, I got nothing. He's a monster.
There are individual things that he says in without context that I agree with. in terms of him saying like, well, not that I agree with, but that could make sense in this world. Like he says, if crimes could be solved by appealing to morality, we wouldn't need the police. Now, I don't agree with the second part of that, but I also don't I don't fully agree that that morality is the answer to fixing all wrongdoing in the world. I think it's there's more to this about institutional power and having those who have empathy and compassion in power, but there are little things like that. That's kind of the main one that comes to mind as having a kernel of truth to it, or at least something that I perceive. But overall, no. He doesn't really believe in anything, and as myself, as all of y'all do, we believe in a lot of things, and I think it kind of stands in opposition to that.
I think the one thing that I might agree with him is at one point he does say the world is not fair. When he's explicitly thinking about his own experiences of, he originally tried to work hard and didn't get anywhere. We don't know actually how he did, but the world is not fair, and that is true. But that is no excuse for what he did, and the fact that he was perfectly fine with beautiful little Nanako being shoved into the TV. Just, he gets no sympathy for me.
And the anguish, it puts her family into, and all of that, and the loved ones of everyone that goes into the TV. Yes.
Yeah, my motivation for completing each dungeon as I encountered them the first time I played Persona 4 started out as, I'm playing an RPG, I want to rescue a person, I'm going to go into the dungeon, but then with Nanako's dungeon, it's like the sky darkened, and it's like, oh no you didn't, I am going to you up, Namatame, and because I did not know the spoiler yet, but again, like I think that there's justifications and reasonable points to Adachi's worldview, but not his actions in the context of Persona 4.
Yeah, it's all about context. I mean, some of the things he's saying from a point of entitlement, from a viewpoint of entitlement about the world not being fair, about there being evil in the world, about good actions maybe not necessarily meaning anything long term. All of that can be objectively true in some situations, but the point is that it's within your control to react or do actions to make it better rather than being like Adachi.
Yeah, he's not interested in systemic change for justice or good or truth. He is he's interested in alleviating his boredom, being able to shoot people, things that are things that are much less justifiable than some of the more general things he says. Let's go on to the next question. Now, in the Shea Serrano Villains podcast, this is called the Jason Statham question. I'm not sure what the best RPG equivalent of that is. Do we call it the Magus question? Maybe
I like it.
Beatrix question?
The Beatrix question, the Golbez question. But the point is, it's called the Jason Statham question because Jason Statham is the main villain, or the actor that portraying the main villain in I believe Furious 7 of the Fast and Furious franchise. I'm not exactly the best Fast and Furious scholar, so I apologize if I'm getting a detail wrong. But then he joins the team, joins the family in the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff, and in Fast 8 or whatever the 8th one is called. The nomenclature of that series is so confusing. It makes the Legend of Heroes look like there was 2 Batman movies.
I mean, it's almost as bad as Bravely Default and Bravely Second.
No! I think Fast and Furious is worse than Bravely Default, Bravely Second, Bravely Default 2. Even if you throw in the mobile games, I think Bravely Default is easier than the Fast and Furious series to decode.
Okay, Kingdom Hearts is it easier?
Okay, you know what? Kingdom Hearts might be the Fast and Furious of video game titles. That's
Fast
true.
and Furious 358 Days Over to Tokyo Drift.
If that was a real movie, fans would be like, "Cool, is Han alive in this one?" But anyway, the Magus. I sort of like the Magus question. So the Magus question for this episode: if circumstances were a little different, could Adachi have switched sides from evil to good and joined the investigation team? And again, this is only the 4th episode of RPG Villains we've done, but I think this is the best case for a yes answer to this question so far. Because
well, I mean, if you play Ultimax, they actually have him join in on the fighting on the team that is trying to actually save the world. He does it very reluctantly and basically says,
yeah, and that's
I'm
also,
tired, I don't want to do this.
And that's also a DLC scenario that I believe, right? Since it's not in the main game.
Well, actually, it is in the main game. It's you only get to play as him if you get the DLC.
Yeah, right. I knew he was a DLC character, but I didn't play that scenario. I played through Ultimax, but not the... and, oh boy, maybe the less we say about the story of the 2 Persona 4 Arena games, the better.
Yeah. But,
I don't hate Labrys, I just hate that I had to play that story mode for 20 hours.
That's fair. Completely understandable. But particularly in the way that plays out is, again, he, if he wasn't actively the villain, I think he wouldn't give a hoo-ha about the investigation. He doesn't care. He doesn't have any of that motivating drive. Even if it was a chance for glory, I don't think he would really want to join. So it's a very reluctant yes.
If a lot of his actions were driven by boredom, if there was another killer, like he still could have had these sort of instincts or something, but could have been more of a Dexter type figure, and I suppose. I mean, I think there is that possibility for him, but instead of like a sense of justice or morality, it's like, well, I want to alleviate boredom, and I guess finding out who killed someone is better than me actually doing so, and I might get to do that for longer. So,
well, okay, let's keep this Dexter analogy going further because this is my wheelhouse here. In season 2 of Dexter, the Keith Carradine character is an FBI agent trying to catch Dexter, and Dexter eventually frames someone else for all the murders he's committed over the years. But in season 4, Keith Carradine comes back so that him and Michael C. Hall, the actor that plays Dexter, can unite against a new threat, who is Lord Farquaad, the dad from Third Rock from the Sun.
John Lithgow?
Yeah, John Lithgow. Yeah, so they sort of unite against John Lithgow, which does not work out for Keith Carradine. Spoilers for a TV drama from 15 years ago. But I think the point of how Adachi could join the team would have to be uniting against a common threat, and Adachi, maybe being bored of jail. Like Izanami is the name of the true ending boss in Persona 4. And Sho is the name of the villain that's threatening to destroy the world in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. I think that Adachi joining the team by busting out of jail or either legitimately or illegitimately to join the team to stop Izanami or join the team to stop Sho, there is a kernel of feasibility there.
There's a kernel of feasibility, but when we talk about his boredom is self-imposed. He talks about being bored, but he doesn't. It's of his own volition. He's not actively, the scenes we get of his apartment. He's just sitting there drinking beer. He doesn't try and do anything.
Yes, but I think teaming up with the main character to defeat John Lithgow is less boring than prison.
I think it was because he at that point he was so limited by prison, but even then he had to be thrust into the TV world by the villain. If he hadn't been that, I don't think he would have joined. Because the only reason he gets into another TV is because somebody is pointing a gun at him.
His social inertia, or ennui, or whatever you want to call it, is very powerful indeed. I don't know if I could ever get that bored, where it's like, I can either sit here and do nothing forever, or save the world that I don't know. I guess
I've never taught elementary education.
I have been. I mean, look, my job has been looking at maps of manholes for hours a day for a while now. But I don't think I've ever been quite as bored as Adachi feels, even in quarantine. Maybe I should rewatch Dexter. You know what? Season 5 of Dexter, underrated, but Season 6 of Dexter, properly rated as being really bad. Oh boy. Not even Edward James Olmos could save that. But
I would actually recommend watching the Persona 4 the animation, just because it is a boatload of fun, because they play the protagonist specifically using the sassiest prompts you possibly could use.
So the same way I did.
Yes.
And the one character they add to Persona 4 the animation that finds her way into Golden is the delightfully deadpan Chinese food delivery girl.
The delivery girl, yes.
Yeah, she's great. This is not about a delivery girl, this is about Adachi.
Yes.
I'm not, we're pretty sure he wouldn't have been the Magus of this game, although he is sort of forced into that position in the extra scenario in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. I don't know, I still think he has a better chance of changing sides than, say, Kefka or Luca Blight or Pokey.
Yes.
But that is an extremely low bar to clear.
Yes. I'd have to agree. I think you assessed it right. He's the most likely of the 4 we've done so far.
But he would do it complaining the entire time.
And it's a very slight chance anyway. I think the circumstances would have to be aligned in a really narrow, specific way.
All right, so the next category or question is called bonus footage. And just like how like a DVD box set of a movie or series will have deleted scenes or extra scenes that weren't in the original release, what is some bonus footage of Persona 4 involving Adachi that is a scene or event we know that takes place, but we don't actually see happen in the game, that we would be interested in seeing?
Well, I think everybody knows my answer. It would be, Adachi spending time with Dojima.
Mm-hmm. You and your Dojima Dojinshi.
Persona 4 fandom seems to absolutely adore the Adachi Dojima ship. I am not one of those people, but it is an interesting sort of contrast between the two. The interesting thing about Persona 4 is we have a huge amount of extra material that is given to us through Golden, the animation, which we should never, ever talk about because it's terrible, the Ultimax games. But even then, there was more, I think, of, things we don't get to see of Adachi that I think everybody sort of agrees is likely, like going out to drink with Dojima, getting really, really bored really, really fast, and sniveling at those gosh darn investigation team kids.
Let's have a Scooby-Doo chase sequence with him and them.
Oh yes, in his part of the TV world, just running through corridors while everyone in the investigation team is just opening the wrong doors
and opening up onto cabbages.
Yeah,
that should have been a scene in the animation. Absolutely.
This is one of the things that I have to say I love about everybody who seems to love this game is everybody enjoys Adachi with cabbages.
Okay.
So what do we think is the better cabbage inside joke? Persona 4 or Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Avatar.
Avatar, yeah.
Those are pretty good cabbages.
The fact that they turn it into Cabbage Corp in Korra is just
so good.
Of greatness.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay. I want to know how someone could spend so much time with wholesome, lovely Nanako and not be moved to see a little bit more good in humanity.
So is your answer Adachi playing nice with Nanako?
Yeah, I would really like to see that. I don't know if it ever actually happened in a non-self-serving way.
Didn't it in Golden?
In his social link in Golden, there are scenes where the protagonist Nanako and Adachi are hanging out, and Adachi does a little magic trick, and which fascinates the perfectly wholesome Nanako. So there's that's kind of like that, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's not a scene of him playing old maid with Nanako or something. that definitely may have happened. I think my answer to this question is a little bit Scooby-Doo. We don't get a meddling kids scene with him where we're aware of his identity. Like there are scenes after you rescue someone from the labyrinth that you'll see like a shadowy figure in the rain saying, "Damn it, they got through again" or something, and that's implied to be either Namatame or Adachi, frustrated at the success of the investigation team. I would kind of like to see Adachi in his apartment alone, angry that Namatame hasn't successfully killed someone yet, despite his efforts. But I don't know if that's in Adachi's personality. He might be just enjoying watching the investigation team struggle and Namatame just get deeper and deeper into this lie of throwing people into the TV to save them. So,
Can I add one more thing?
Oh yeah, please.
This is something that came up actually with a discussion of is that when you fight Adachi, he's in the end game of the TV world. He's very adept at the TV world, so there has to be scenes that we're missing of him climbing into the TV and
training or something. Yeah,
training or
exploring.
He knows how to use his persona. It takes us nearly 60 hours to get to this point.
You know what? I was always a little bit curious about that too. He was relying on Namatame for like a big chunk of the game, but he has that knowledge, so that would be interesting.
I'm changing my answer. I like that, Lucy. I want to see Adachi like training and exploring in the TV world to sort of hone his skills, or at least experiment with his skills there. That's fascinating to me.
I would like to see a bit of him in custody because of, we get the letter, but there's some things that I would like to see more of his thought process as to, in one of the endings, why he's cooperating with the police and what led him to come to that decision that this was the move that he would take.
Yeah, there's more potential for this than I thought, because I mean, Persona 4 gives you so much text that it's almost, I don't know, it's a little challenging to imagine what they don't give you. But there was way more to explore here than I thought. But let's move on to the next category. This category is called regrets. This can be any character in the game, not just Adachi, just anyone in the game who has regrets about the events or situations that happened in Persona 4. You could say Adachi for getting caught, or maybe he does have some regret about the murders he committed, but I'm less confident about that. The two people I think are full of regret the most are Namatame, who, when he realizes that what he's been doing is endangering people rather than saving them, and he's still full of regret for everything that happened to Yamano, because he blames himself for her death. The poor man is suffering for the entirety of Persona 4. Yep. And he only feels worse when the investigation team stops him and he realizes that what he was doing was wrong. And the other person is Dojima, because Dojima has been trying to solve these murders, has suspected everyone from his own son to some of his son's classmates, and his daughter, the complete light of his life, almost dies during the course of the investigation, only for the answer to hit him like a truck that it was his junior detective partner Adachi behind all of it, or most of it, is just a hammer. And when Naoto and the main character sort of confront Adachi about it, and Dojima is present, but he's injured. I think he's using crutches or something. Yep. And Adachi just flees, and you hear Dojima scream Adachi. It's like, oh no, Dojima's realizing that the answer was under his nose the whole time. And because Dojima is a detective and a professional and has both professional pride and all kinds of feelings for his lovely daughter who almost died,
who does die?
Yeah,
if
she dies in the,
find out who the true murderer was.
Right. If you get the bad ending with the wrong dialogue choice, in the Namatame interrogation, the Nanako dies, but she sort of, I believe she I believe like her heart monitor goes flat and then she revives shortly after if you do get the right ending. So it's a huge scare at least. But
no matter
like Namatame and Dojima leap out to me as being full of regret. But are there any other characters that have just a lot of regrets over the Adachi investigation?
I'm curious whether the protagonist would have regrets depending on the ending. I think specifically in reference to the accomplice ending.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What exactly? I'm not sure. I think it's really interesting that we have the accomplice ending in the game.
Yep.
But what exactly was the developer's intent with that? And what is supposed to be going through Yu's head right now?
I think to get the accomplice ending, you have to complete most of Adachi's social link, and then when you have the opportunity to confront Adachi, instead of revealing him as the killer, you sort of deliberately pass, and then you have a goodbye scene with Adachi with him leaving town.
And you burn up his letter.
And you burn up the letter that could be incriminating. I think it's sort of for fan service reasons. Like, there was fan interest in, if not a relationship, then at least the protagonist interacting with Adachi more. So they sort of threw fans a bone by giving this non-canon, almost evil ending that I don't love, but it's at least I mean I'm sure that's enough fuel for the fan fire to create a lot of interesting fiction and art as a result.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have strong feelings about that ending.
Yeah.
I was almost going to give a flippant ending, saying the player's going to have regrets if they get that ending, because it bothers me. It does kind of bother me. I don't think it holds a lot of water narratively, but that's just personal opinion.
It's not a great friendship that they forge in that social link, although it is something, I guess. And basically, you're making the choice of this friendship, and this person Adachi is more valuable than the murder and kidnapping of several people.
I think it kind of goes to this idea of duality in it, how the kind of dark ways in which Adachi is supposed to reflect you, most obviously with you having Izanagi and Adachi having Magatsu Izanagi. But I also agree that it's not a great ending, and I didn't get it in my game. I got a good ending, but I watched it on YouTube, and I thought it was interesting, and it's more content, and that's what we're all craving, right? But it doesn't have as many threads as you would like to see.
I agree. I feel it was mostly thrown in as a bone. It is one that I've tried all three of the original endings. I just could not bring myself to do the accomplice ending. Getting back to the question as far as regrets, I do agree that Dojima really has a huge amount of regrets, particularly when you get the sense that he really tried to reach out to Adachi, and he takes it personally when Adachi's revealed, because he feels like he failed Adachi in some way, and that's why he shows up in the arena games going to visit Adachi in prison, because he feels like this is somehow his fault, which, my precious cinnamon roll did nothing wrong. But it's an interesting sort of two sides of the coin of, they're both cops, but Adachi and Dojima are very, very different. And it plays out really interesting.
Okay, and let's go beyond the ending where you apprehend Adachi a little bit, because the game's not quite over yet. If you unlock the final dungeon in the epilogue, again, this is we all know this already, but for just so that it's out in the open, the gas station attendant just outside town is really the goddess Izanami in disguise. Like, continuing the truth fog dual metaphors in this game, Izanami granted persona powers and the ability to enter the TV world to the main character Adachi and Namatame, and then just sort of decided to see what happens and see if humanity is more interested in living in a fog of lies or being revealed to uncomfortable truths. So, but it basically, the epilogue is the protagonist and other main characters sort of deciding to investigate the last few unanswered questions, prompted in part by the letter from Adachi, and then eventually challenging Izanami. And because the protagonist's persona is Izanagi, this ties into an old like Shinto creation myth of the god Izanagi and the goddess Izanami of sort of creation and destruction, life and death. But it ends up being a, big shadowy dungeon, big sort of abomination style Japanese RPG final boss battle. But because of this Izanami element, you could call into question, is Adachi the main villain of Persona 4? If not Adachi, then maybe is Izanami the main villain, because she set all of this into motion by granting mortals supernatural powers and watching it play out. Is Namatame the main villain for creating a lot of the conflict in the center of the game? Or is Nanako the main villain because she's brainwashed all of us into loving her, and she will eventually become the hegemon of the entire world, and we will have no choice but to follow her?
Well, this is where I get to break out this really obscure knowledge that I have.
Hit me.
In Persona 4, the animation, Nanako and Izanami share the same voice actress.
Well, that is a little bit of a twist, maybe on the main idea that the protagonist and Adachi both share the same voice actor, with the twist being that the protagonist is mostly a silent protagonist, with most of his dialogue taking place in battle. So it's possible that you can't recognize in the English version Johnny Young Bosch as voicing two key characters in that game. And there's a similar thing in Persona 3 where another character attached to the main villain is the same voice as the protagonist, who goes on to voice Yosuke in Persona 4, which is confusing.
Wow. Yeah.
I have to say, this has been a question that's gone around for years, and I honestly think that Izanami, while she did start things off, she only planted the seed. It was Adachi who decided to use the powers given to him for the worst possible means. So I still say it's Adachi is the true villain.
And exploit another point of the trifecta of persona powers, too, so much.
I suppose it's kind of a question of, do you kind of blame Izanami as this wheel for setting things in motion? Or do you blame Adachi for continuing to let this spin out of control? And I'd be more so on the idea of Adachi, because, Izanami, it is just kind of seeds and whispers, but it really is Adachi's actions that he took to make him the main villain.
Well, and I think the game thematically makes that perfectly clear. There's a lot in a game about choice and the bonds you make, and two people had the same powers and one made very different choices from the other. So,
three people had powers.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And some people argue that the fog shadow that comes out of Adachi was somehow spurring Adachi on, but I personally don't prescribe to that idea and think that it was all Adachi time.
I forget the name of the fog monster that's at the end of Magatsu Inaba also, but I believe they were sort of acting as an agent of Izanami, where sort of Izanami sort of stopped being an absent from the conflict and decided to sort of just inject a little bit of interest to see if the protagonist could overcome a more direct intervention from her. But I still basically agree with the panel here. Adachi's the main villain because, like, Izanami was a semi-interested observer who gave superpowers to lab animals to see what happened, while Adachi was moving this in a more direct manner and was using his powers to kill people or influence others to kill people, which is, I think, makes him the central villain of Persona 4.
Yep.
So, I think we've answered all of the questions here. What are our final thoughts on Persona 4 and or Adachi? I'll go first. I love this game. It's problematic. There are parts that I wish in a rewrite would be removed or adjusted for modern audiences. But I really love the characters in this game, and what it hits from thematic perspectives and just a moment and sort of a moment to moment. You're basically acting out a full season of an anime drama. I love all of those parts of it, and I think Adachi is a scary, loathsome villain, and who also is a compelling whodunit. Like when I played this game for the first time, I was spoiled a little early on the identity of the villain, but not for my whole time playing the game. I wanted to know who the killer was, and I think that this is and because I mean, of course, I love whodunits. I mean, just look at the television shows I talk about in this podcast, but. It's a good whodunit, and Adachi hits the right notes of skipping over red herrings and appearing incompetent, and then making the transformation to being just this hateable villain to making you question him a little bit in the epilogue of the game, even though I still dislike him. He's a great villain in a great RPG, and I don't like Adachi, but I like him as a villain in this game.
Yeah, I think that Adachi is an effective villain. He's not the best part of what I think is a really great game. And people who have heard me, especially on this podcast, know that there are, I probably have certain feelings about some characters and how they're characterized. But when this game is kind of firing on all cylinders and at its best, it is a really good game. And though Adachi may just be one part of that, he is an effective part of the package. And I think he is a very good RPG villain.
I mean, you two have summed up my feelings very well. I think Adachi is a good villain for all the reasons you mentioned. Also because of the way he fits in with the themes of the game, kind of like I mentioned briefly earlier. He really highlights the best parts of the investigation team. I think he's a good foil.
I think the entire RPG fan staff knows that I am a Persona 4 fangirl. I absolutely adore this game. I talk about it nonstop to the point that it's sort of when this podcast was being discussed, my name immediately came up for this podcast. I do think that, as everybody said, there are problematic elements that, could easily be updated for the game, but overall it is a wonderful, wonderful, and by far my favorite Persona game. I think that Adachi is particularly effective because his motivation is something that I think a lot of people have encountered in some form, particularly online and in their daily dealings. And my one biggest regret is the fact that they never gave Dojima a Persona. Gosh darn it!
You're feeling I guess Hierophant or Arcana.
I mean, nothing upsets me more than the fact that they were planning to put Dojima as a playable character in the arena games with Nanako as his summon, but the makers of the game got shot down by Atlas, and I'm never going to forgive them for that.
I have an unfortunate problem of mixing up Axis, Arxis, and Atlas. Not mixing them up content wise. I know what each of them make, but they just sound so similar that I'll accidentally say one over the other, and it's worst between Arc System Works and Axis. But I would have liked to see that. I also wouldn't have minded seeing him take a more active role in the Persona 4 dancing game, which does have playable Nanako and playable Adachi in it.
You only get a Dojima mask, which isn't the same.
There is a Dojima outfit for the main character also.
Yes.
But definitely not enough. But I think what we have had enough of is this podcast. We basically agreed Adachi is a good villain and a bad person, while Nanako is a terrible villain but the best person. I think that about wraps it up for now. Listeners, thank you so much for allowing us to wax poetic and analytical on Adachi, the Persona 4 killer. I had a lot of fun talking about this. I really like doing these villain episodes and would like to do more. Please hit us with suggestions on Twitter or via email, retro@rpgfan.com. And thank you, panelists, Lucy, Hilary, and Joe, for joining me on this. This was a lot of fun.
It definitely was.
But speaking of Persona things, next week we're doing an episode on the music of the Persona series. But Sollosi, you may ask, there's already a music podcast that hasn't had a new episode in 4 years. What are you doing? Well, what we're doing exactly is reviving Rhythm Encounter. Rhythm Encounter is making a comeback this month, September 2020. I'm not sure if this episode is before or after the Rhythm Encounter comeback, because that's the dates are. We're recording this a little bit early, so there's still some dates up in the air. But regardless, whether an episode exists or not, you should subscribe or resubscribe or take a look at the Rhythm Encounter feed, because it will be updating every 2 weeks starting very soon if it hasn't already started. But to coincide with the launch, Random Encounter and Retro Encounter are each doing their own music episode to just sort of be there in solidarity with the Rhythm Encounter relaunch. Retro Encounter's episode in that relaunch is all about Persona music. We haven't recorded it yet, but we're bringing on 9 Persona tracks that we are going to celebrate and deliberate, and it's going to be really, really fun. I can't wait to record that soon.
Every day is great with your Junas.
One might say we're going to be
Everyday
dancing all night.
Young Life, Junasu.
I think the intent is for Random and Retro to be before the relaunch, but in any case, it's a lot of fun music coming your way.
Yeah, so if it's not out already, it will be coming soon. September 2020, Rhythm Encounter is coming back for the first time since 2017. And that's exciting. What was also exciting is later this month we're doing 2 episodes on Persona 2 Innocent Sin. That I played the game a couple years ago, and it is super good, so I'm sure that discussion is going to be awesome. And coming in October, this is probably, now that Suikoden 2 is behind us and Kingdom Hearts is behind us, I think this was the most requested game for Retro Encounter over the past, I don't know, year and a half, maybe full year. Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium, probably the most celebrated RPG for the Sega Genesis, depending on your feelings on, I don't know, Shining Force and Landstalker, is coming to Retro Encounter. We're doing 2 episodes on Phantasy Star 4 in October. I have not completed a single Sega Genesis game in my entire life other than Golden Axe, so that's going to be an experience for me. I was the opposite of a Sega kid. I never had a Sega console growing up, and I bought a used Dreamcast for a while just to play Skies of Arcadia and a whole bunch of Power Stone. But that is not here nor there. What is definitely here is Phantasy Star 4 coming in October. And I guess we can talk about one other future episode. Pretty recently, our episode 250 poll ended, and the winner was Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean. So I'm pretty sure the first episode of 2021... January 2021 is going to be Baten Kaitos, so expect 2 Baten Kaitos episodes in about 4 months. So I mentioned before, you can email us, retro@rpgfan.com to contact us. You can also comment on the message boards, visit the RPG Fan Facebook page, our Instagram page, our Twitter page, our Discord server, our Twitch channel, something streaming on that Twitch channel every day. Please engage in RPG Fan however you please. You can also check out our other fine podcasts, Random Encounter about randomness every 2 weeks, Rhythm Encounter soon to return about RPG music every 2 weeks, and also Phoenix Edge, a weekly podcast mostly focused on current events. Review Retro Encounter or those 3 other podcasts on iTunes or Google Play or however you are listening to us. Give us feedback, please. So, panel, let's say goodbye to all the nice listeners by sharing our social media information that we are willing to share, starting with you, Hilary.
All right. You can definitely email hilary@rpgfan.com, or I am EPFire on Discord.
And Joe.
You can find me on RPG Fan's social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter, and you can also find me personally on Twitter, Discord, and Instagram as @EvilEast. I will take all Kingdom Hearts queries that were supposed to be for Mike Sollosi for myself. Put that on my back.
Your burden is appreciated. And Lucy, share your demon contract.
Yes. Indeed. Like Joe, you can find me at RPG Fans social media on Facebook and Twitter. You can also find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Discord as Jess Idries, JESIDRES. And you can find all of my Dojima fan art, hopefully not easily.
And with that, the contract is sealed. Welcome to the Velvet Room.
Okay, if we're comparing our villain laughs, the podcast is definitely over. Thank you. Good night. And good luck.